side is Srimad Bhagavatam, and they're mutually supportive. Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of a book written in Sanskrit by Rupa Goswami entitled Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. It's a compilation by Rupa Goswami of the teachings that he received from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the science of devotional service, starting from sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti, the stages of unfolding of the life of devotion. And according to Nectar Devotion, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there are a number of items that are recommended as helpful or nourishing to a life of devotion to Krishna. 64 items are identified, and of those 64, 5 are especially potent forms of devotional service. And most of you here, you know what those 5 are. And 2 of the 5 are these same 2. Chanting the holy name, hearing from the scriptures, such as Srimad Bhagavatam, worshipping the deity form of the Lord, serving the devotees of the Lord, and living in St. Louis. No, residing in a sacred place. Residing in a sacred place. If one cannot reside in a sacred place, then one can visit that sacred place and hear about the activities of the Lord performed in that sacred place and give your heart to that sacred place, even though you're physically not there. So these are 2 of the 5 most potent forms of devotional service. And in addition to those 5 potent forms, there's processes of devotional service. 9 processes of devotional service are mentioned in Padma Purana, starting with Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, etc. So of these 9 processes of devotional service, the most important is to always chant the holy name of the Lord. If one does so avoiding the 10 kinds of offenses, it's also a Padma Purana teaching, 10 kinds of offenses, one very easily obtains the most valuable love of God. So the elevated stage of prema can be attained by proper sadhana and without offense. The Srimad Bhagavatam tells us, this is the last chapter of Canto 12, this Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy because it is the subject matter, its subject matter is the absolute truth, which, while not different from the spirit soul, is the ultimate reality, one without a second. The goal of this literature is exclusive devotional service unto that supreme truth. There's a very nice explanation, expanded explanation of what this verse says, found in one of the writings of the 6 Goswamis. We've been discussing the 6 Goswamis in the evening classes, one of them being Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami was the son, he was the nephew of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. All 3 were very Saraswat Brahmin families from Karnataka, but after some generations migrated to the northern parts of India. And Jiva Goswami wrote a very comprehensive commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam called the Sandarbhas, the 6 Sandarbhas, Sat Sandarbhas. And the first of them is Tatva Sandarba. And in Tatva Sandarba, there's the beginning section, Pramana Kanda section, describes the best evidence or pramana for knowing the absolute truth. The best pramana is Shabda. I'll just go through this quickly. It can take, several days to discuss all of this, several classes over several days, a week even. Anyway, we're very familiar. We're all followers of ISKCON have been trained in these principles. There's direct sense perception, pratyaksha. That's one of the ways of knowing things. You observe it. This is the show me state, right? Seeing is believing. So that's one way of evidence is sense perception. But senses are imperfect. So another is anuman, or inference, or logic. But logic is also fallible in using the same imperfect instruments of sense perception to reason with. So that's 2, sense perception, reason and logic, and the third is shabda, or sound. By hearing, one can understand something. And the best shabda is that which is coming from a source that does not have human defect, or apodusheya shabda. Apodusheya shabda is the personality of Godhead. And that's the Vedas, because the Vedas are from the personality of Godhead. The breathing of the personality, Lord Narayana, is the sound of the Vedas, and then received by rishis, etc., etc. So apodusheya shabda is the best means. So in that text of the apodusheya shabda, the Vedas is the best, and of the Vedas he goes through a series of steps indicating that, without going through the steps, because it would take a while, it's Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the best evidence. Amala pramana, the spotless evidence for understanding the absolute truth, because it's just focused on the absolute truth. The Bhagavan feature of the absolute truth at that, the personal feature. Here's another text. The power of these 5 principles is very wonderful and difficult to understand. Even without faith in them, a person who is offenseless can awaken his dormant love of Krishna simply by being a little connected with them. There you see some steps leading up, 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 and there at the top there's Radha and Krishna, and in ecstasy before them is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By following this step-by-step process of reaching the personality of Godhead through these 5 principles. Here's another graphic showing the same. There's some steps going up, up, up. There's Krishna at the top of the steps. And at the right side of the steps, that's the 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. And on the left side of that little path, that's the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And together these 2 lead to the goal. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, always discuss Srimad Bhagavatam and constantly chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. In this way, you'll be able to attain liberation very easily, and you'll be elevated to the enjoyment of love of Godhead. So the focus is on these two, the chanting of the holy name and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a nice teaching about Lord Chaitanya's initiation. When he received Diksha from his spiritual master, it is said that he instructed him 1 week on one verse from Brihat Naradiya Purana. And that one verse was very simple, very simple. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva, 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 Gatiranyata. Very simple verse. The chanting of the holy name is Na Asti Eva. It's certainly, there isn't an alternative for achieving Gati, the destination or goal of spiritual practice. So we'll spend some time on hearing about the holy name, glories of the holy name, from different scriptural sources. One of them is from the section of Srimad Bhagavatam where Narada is visiting Vasudeva in Dwaraka, and Vasudeva is taking the opportunity to ask questions of Narada. And Narada is making reference to the 9 sons of Rishabdev, the Naviyogendras. And one by one they're answering questions. And one of those discussions, it says, for the conditioned souls wandering in this world, there's no greater attainment than Sankirtan, for which one obtains bhakti with mind fixed on the Lord, and by which samsara is destroyed. So this is discussed and expanded upon in another one of Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas, Bhakti Sandarba. Or a nice description is found in the first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. Now the painting on the left side, that's Ajamila. Ajamila is being rescued by the Vishnu Dutas as the Yamadutas are using subtle ropes to take his subtle body and soul away to Yamaraj. But because he chanted the name Narayana as they were approaching out of fear, he was calling his son. He wasn't calling Lord Narayan, he was calling his son, who he named Narayana. And because of that, unintentionally, Sanketya Namabhas, it's called, unintentional chanting of the name, the Vishnu Dutas came and protected him, saying that he had become freed from so many sinful activities that he had done in the course of his life, just by that Sanketya Namabhas, unintentional chanting. And that same section in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, one who chants the holy name of the Lord is immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins, even if he, there it is in the Sanskrit, you see the first word in the Sanskrit up there, Sanketya, that's indirectly or indicating something else. Parihasya is joking. For musical entertainment, stobham. And even neglectfully, we're very familiar with that one, helanam. These are 4 categories of namabhas, or the shadow or a reflection of the name Abbas. Let's take some examples. We already did one example of indirectly or unintentionally indicating something else. Jamila was indicating his son. But he said Narayan, and when he called Narayana, the agents of Narayana came to protect him. Or jokingly, sometimes when we go in the public and have Harinam Sankirtan, people will come by and tease and joke and say Hare Krishna in a funny way. Ha 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 ha. I'll tell you a little story. Is it okay to tell a little story? It's a little story. In New York, there was a temple in Brooklyn that at that time was in a residential neighborhood, a very heavy Italian neighborhood. And the people, didn't mind us, except they didn't want us to park our cars on the street because they wanted to park their cars on the street. So if we left our cars on the street, they'd burn the cars to say, don't park your car on the street. Or if we forgot to close the window during kirtan, they'd throw not just stones, but little bombs, Molotov cocktails through the window. Tell us, make sure you close your window during kirtan. That was a heavy neighborhood. And the place where the temple was on the corner, and on the opposite corner, the same side of the street, but the opposite corner, was an elementary school. And the elementary school had a big, tall, like a 10-foot tall wrought iron fence painted black with spikes in the top, and so the kids can't get out and no one can get in. All the way around it was with a playground that's all paved. So when we would go on into the city, we'd have a morning program and have breakfast and go into the city, and we'd chant on the way to the subway, and then coming back for lunch, we'd chant on the way back to the temple from the subway. And as we were passing by the schoolyard, the kids would come. They were on their lunch break, and we were heading back for lunch. So they waited for us along the fence, and as we were coming along the fence, they would make fun. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So I remember very clearly one time, Trivikram Swami, who was a very tall sannyasi, at the end of one class, he stood up. It was questions, and he didn't just raise his hand. He stood up and said, Prabhupada, isn't it offensive that these children, when we come by, they're making fun like this? And Prabhupada said, no, that's very good. It's very good. It's very good. And it was very good. And I had some evidence of that. Some years later, maybe, 10, 12 years more, maybe 15 years later, I was passing through the Detroit airport at a time when Northwest was still operating, and it was the hub. So we was changing planes. I was just standing waiting for the departure of in a lounge. And down the hallway, I heard some employees laughing and carrying on, and just they're walking right past the departure lounge. And one of them stopped right in front of me and looked like I was a ghost or something. And he told his friends to go ahead, I'll catch up with you. And he said, are you Hare Krishna? And I was thinking to say, it's not Halloween. But I said, no, I'm a Hare Krishna. He said, oh, no. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, I used to live in Brooklyn, And the Hare Krishna temple was right across the street from our school. And I said, I lived in that temple. And he said, oh, no. And then he described what they did. We used to burn your cars, you throw rocks through your windows, and we used to make fun of you all the time when you would come home for your lunch break. And, I said, I remember all of that because I was one of the people that was, oh, no. He said, but I want to tell you that melody, it was mesmerizing from since childhood. That melody would go in my mind, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and he just sang the whole mantra. And even today, as we were getting off of work, I started singing that melody. And you know what? All my coworkers started laughing at me. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Just like we used to laugh at you. And I was thinking, oh, no, we were so bad. But you people were always so nice. You always fed people. You treated people kindly. You never got angry when we would burn your cars and throw rocks through your windows. Keep up the good work. You're doing good work. So I took it that was Super Soul speaking through this man. Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. So even he was speaking laughingly. This is Parihasya Namabas. It was powerful. He had great respect for the lifestyle of bhakti practitioner, and the mantra was still with him to that day, so many years later. So that's Parihasya Namabas, Stoba, musical entertainment. Little story. Musical entertainment. I had some experience of that long, long ago. Some years ago, I was in college. And the Broadway musical Hair was popular at that time. I didn't go, but I heard about it. And somehow, I can't remember how it started, but somebody told me on the recording of the musical Hair, they have a recording of chanting Hare Krishna. So I used to go to the music room on the 4th floor of Norton Student Center and check out the Hair album, go into the recording room or the playing room, and just play that song over and over again. I didn't know exactly what it was. I hadn't met a devotee. I just was attracted to it. I didn't know why, but I just listened to it again and again. It was just musical. It was Broadway musical entertainment. In the course of the Broadway musical, it was a parody on the counterculture of that time, the 60s counterculture. And the Hare Krishna movement was a central piece of the counterculture movement. So it had some effect. Musical. Performance. And neglectfully, that's the one that we know about, chanting where your mind is somewhere else, although your mouth is with the mantra. That's neglectfully or distractedly. But that's in a form of Abbas chanting, and it's very powerful, according to this text. Immediately, one who chants without offense, one who chants the holy name of the Lord is immediately freed from the actions of unlimited sins, even if it's one of these 4 Abbas forms of chanting. That's very powerful. So it's a good thing to do. From the 2nd canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, note all these references so far are from the Bhagavatam. This is Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. O King, Etan Nirvidyamananam, celebrated verse, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desire, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. There's a commentary on this verse by Sridhar Swami. There is no method more beneficial than singing the Lord's names, both for the practitioners and for those who have already attained perfection. For those desiring material enjoyment, singing the Lord's names is the very means by which their desires can be fulfilled. For those who seek liberation, this alone is the means of salvation. And for those who seek knowledge of the Absolute, this also has been determined as the goal. By saying that this has already been concluded, it indicates that there is no need for further evidence in this regard. Again, Srimad Bhagavatam, where Narada Muni is speaking to Vyasadeva about his previous life as a young son of a maidservant, getting some association with sadhus, the Bhakti Vedantas, and they taught him this process of chanting. Thus I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeated recitation, ignoring all the formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembering of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are benedictory. So doing, I travel all over the earth, fully satisfied, humble and unenvious. Narada to Vyas. Guess what? Here's another Bhagavatam verse. Canto 3, Chapter 33. Aho Bhattasva Pacho Togariyan. Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name, even if born in the families of dog-eaters, Swapacha. Such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your Lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name of your Lordship, they must have bathed at holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required. Tepas tapas tu juhuvu sasnur arya. Here's a verse which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu liked. This is taken from Canto 11, Chapter 2. By chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord, one comes to the stage of love of Godhead. Then the devotee is fixed in his vow as an eternal servant of the Lord, and he gradually becomes very much attached to a particular name and form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As his heart melts with ecstatic love, he laughs very loudly or cries and shouts. Sometimes he sings and dances like a madman, for he is indifferent to public opinion. So it sounds pretty compelling. All we need to do is chant. Nam Nam Akari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis. The ISKCON devotees are very familiar with this because it's Lord Chaitanya's prayer, one of his 8 prayers. There are shikshas, instructions about chanting. The translation reads, O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus, you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies, Nija Sarva Shaktis. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names, O my Lord. Out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. So the emphasis, the color coding there is Nitya Sarva Shaktis. The name itself has all transcendental potencies. Whew. So it sounds like we don't need anything else, right? Why even bother with this Srimad Bhagavatam? What's its role? Here's a nice verse from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, appreciating Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Araju Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas, celebrated verse. You see in red, Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is worshipped along with his transcendental abode, Vrindavan. The most pleasing form of worship for the Lord is that which was performed by the gopis of Vrindavan. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything. And pure love of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life for all men. These statements, for which we have the highest regard, are the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the emphasis is now going to the Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. Pramana means evidence. Amala means spotless. It's the best of all evidence. We have this nice painting. Perhaps you've seen it before. This is King Prataparudra paying his obeisances before Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and their associates, while Gadadhar Pandit is reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. They're all hearing from him. In fact, it's said that Lord Chaitanya would hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit every day for several hours. And it was a very ecstatic experience. It says specifically he would hear the pastimes of Dhruva and Prahlad again and again. And after hearing them again and again, he would say it again. Say it again. Because the topics of the personality of God are meant to be, it's compared to making sandalwood paste. Now some of you here have probably done that. When you make sandalwood paste, it's really simple. It's just three things. Something about the size of your fist, a piece of sandalwood, a flat rock, and a little water. And just make some circular motion, around and around and around, and around and around and around. And pretty soon you'll have paste. And the paste is very fragrant. What's inside the wood comes out. The fragrance of the wood, sandalwood, is very fragrant and very cooling. It has those two properties very naturally. But it's within the wood, it just takes the motion described. And so similarly, by hearing the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam again and again, the sweetness of those topics comes out. The rasa, the taste, the happiness that one can experience in one's relationship with the personality of Godhead. By hearing about Bhagavan, that happiness comes out. Here's a statement that Prabhupada made in his introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam. In the modern age, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached the Srimad Bhagavatam by practical demonstration. It is easier to penetrate into the topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam through the medium of Sri Chaitanya's causeless mercy. Now here's something important for us. Prabhupada had his spiritual master was Bhaktisiddhanta, and Bhaktisiddhanta was very prolific in his writing and very profound in what he wrote. And here's one of the things he wrote. The kirtan culture widespread in Bengal during his time had sprung from Lord Chaitanya's propagating Harir Nama Eva Kevalam, misunderstanding of which has led to an underemphasis of the importance of Shravanam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Remember the first three of the 9 processes of bhakti. So emphasis on Kirtanam without sufficient emphasis on Shravanam has led to a misunderstanding. But Bhaktisiddhanta revealed that Hari Katha is the Swarup Shakti of Harinam. There you see in the painting that's Vyasadeva compiling the Vedas. There's the Vedas on the one side and the holy name indicated by the japa beads with all revealing Krishna. So here's what he wrote. Just as Krishna is properly worshipped not alone but with his Swarup Shakti, Sri Radha, recitation of Harinam is incomplete and improper unless accompanied by hearing Harikatha. Now this is something that we've all been trained. We worship Krishna with his potency. Just Sita, we don't worship Sita without Ram or Ram without Sita. That was Ravana's problem. He wanted Sita without Ram. And Shurpanakha wanted Ram without Sita. But the devotees want Sita Ram. They want Sita and Ram to be together and worship that way. Or Lakshmi Narayan and Radha Krishna. So we don't worship alone. We worship together. And so the name and Harikatha are meant to be together. Here's from the Bhagavatam again. Hearing from the text of Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the most important process of hearing. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of transcendental chanting of the holy name, and therefore the chanting and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam are transcendentally full of mellows. A nice photograph of Prabhupada reading the Bhagavatam in Bombay with the palm trees in the background. A celebrated verse in the Bhagavatam is this Atmarama Verse, which many of you have heard. Atmaramas chamunayo nirgrantha api urukrame. All different varieties of Atmaramas. Atma Rama is those who have taken pleasure in the Atma. Especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed of all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. In other words, liberated souls, or the Atmaramas, aren't interested in anything material, but they're interested in the topics of the Bhagavatam, which means the topics of the Bhagavatam are not material. That was the case with Shukadeva. Shukadeva was a liberated soul with no attraction for anything material, but he came attracted to Bhagavatam, indicating it's not material. The messages within the Bhagavatam are not material. Some of you may know this. I could spend a little bit of time. See how we're doing with time. There's a description in Padma Purana. I'll tell the story. It's a nice story. The Gokarna story. In Padma Purana, there's a section, a pretty substantial section, called Bhagavat Mahatmya. Bhagavat Mahatmya. It's glorifying the Srimad Bhagavatam. Although a shorter version, there's a longer version. In the Padma Purana describes in a city that later became called Gokarna, along the Tungabhadra River, was a place of high learning. Many brahmanas lived there, and one of those brahmanas, Atmadev was his name, was childless. And he his wife was a little disturbing too. But that was okay, because he was a good Brahmin and she was his wife. But there was no son, and so he went to the forest to undergo austerities with the hopes that with austerities somehow he would get some benediction that he could have a son. So it so happened that when he went to the forest, he was sitting by the bank of a river, engaged in austerities, and one sannyasi came. And he asked the sannyasi, can you give me some benediction so that I can have a son? And the sannyasi said, let me check your horoscope. And he checked his horoscope and did some meditation. And he said, sorry to say, for 7 lifetimes, you're not going to have any son. And Atmadev said, please do something, do something. He said, you're like, he made reference to the description of Chitraketu. He had so many wives, and he was not meant to have a son. Your chart is very clear. You're not meant to have a son. So just accept it. You're not meant to have a son. Oh, please do something, please do something. So he said, all right. Here's a mango. I've chanted some mantras. And the mango can be given to your wife, and you'll have a son, but she has to fast for 1 year. So he was very happy. He went back and showed his wife the mango and said, guess what? We're going to have a son, but you have to fast for 1 year. She liked the idea of having a mango. She liked the idea of having a son, but she didn't like the idea of fasting for a year. And so she confided in her sister, her younger sister. Her younger sister was pregnant. She said, I have a suggestion. You can tell everybody, tell your husband you ate the mango, and after some time you'll have a son. I'm pregnant. I'll give you my son when my son is born. Of course, didn't know if it would be a boy or a girl because they didn't have that procedures then. In any case, I'll give you my son. So that, she said, great idea. I like the idea. And they gave the mango to a cow to see what would happen. Sure enough, the cow gave birth to a human boy that had ears like a cow. So they gave him the name Gokarna. Cow ears. And then his sister gave birth to a son, and they named their son Dundukari. Dundukari was born from a Brahmana or Brahmani, but he was really bad. He was really bad. Well, long list of his bad things. And Gokarna was really good. And they kind of grew up like brothers, like really close friends, because they were around the same age and lived in the same place. And in the course of time, fast forward, Dundukari became so bad that his father, trying to train him in so many ways, it was hopeless. And so he just left for the forest to take sannyas, leaving his wife home with Dundukari. And he was so bad, she entered fire and gave up her life. It was really bad. So there's Dundukari with the house to himself, and he started cohabiting with a prostitute and doing bad things that, stealing and plundering and doing bad things to maintain his relationship with his prostitute friend. And in course of time, the king came to hear of his robbing and stealing and so forth, so he sent constables to tie him up and throw him down a well and so he would be killed. So end of Dundakari, but he then became a ghost. Dundakari became a ghost. And because he had all this bad sinful activities that he had done for so long. And when his Gokarna friend heard about this, he went to Gaya to perform the rituals so that a departed relative would be relieved of the reactions of their past activities. But it didn't work because Gokarna was still being visited by the ghost saying, do something, please do something. And so Gokarna wanted to help his friend, or like half brother. And so he decided to worship Lord Shiva. So he began worshiping Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva said, you go to such and such sannyasi and he'll help you. He went to such and such sannyasi. He said, you need to recite Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you recite Srimad Bhagavatam, you could relieve him of his sinful reactions. So that's what he did. Gokarna, very good Brahmin, for 7 days he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, and there were a lot of people attending because he was a good reciter of the Bhagavatam. And his half-brother, Dundakari, wanted to attend, but he was in a ghost body, so he concealed himself inside the bamboo poles that were surrounding the Kata area. And at the end of each day, one of the knots, this is in Padma Purana, one of the knots of the bamboo broke. And on the seventh day, a Vaikuntha Vimana descended, a very glorious description, and he, in an effulgent body, ascended onto the Vimana and said, here I go. And Gokarna said to him, before you go, can you explain why all the other people here in the audience didn't get the same thing that you got? And he said, Gokarna said, because they weren't listening so attentively. I was listening really attentively because I wanted to get freed from that curse of becoming a ghost. So all the other people said, let's do it again. We'll be really attentive this time. And one by one, they ascended to Vaikuntha in Padma Purana, just from hearing Srimad Bhagavatam attentively. Second canto, Pibata Bhagavata Atmana Satam. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aims of life, known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. The painting on the left is degraded society in the dark age of Kali, and over on the upper part of the painting is the light of the Bhagavat entering into this dark age of Kali. Few more verses. We spend a lot of time with the holy name, and now we're spending time with the Bhagavatam. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna manifested in their hearts within a short time. There he is, this young boy with Krishna in his heart. Or, 12th Canto Bhagavatam, one who, with undeviating attention, constantly recites this literature at every moment of every hour, as well as one who faithfully hears even one verse, or half a verse, or a single line, or even a half a line, certainly purifies his very self. They look very happy, that young couple there. So, conclusion. Harinam cleanses envy, which is the root cause of all anarthas or unwanted things in the heart. We know this from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching by chanting Krishna's holy name, Chaita Darpana Marjanam. One cleanses all the dust from the mirror of one's consciousness. And here's the six Goswamis discussing the topics Nirmatsaranam Satam. They're enjoying the benefit of this chanting. This is a phrase taken directly from the second verse of the first canto Bhagavatam. Here's the conclusion. We're almost done. Srinam purifies and allows one to enter deeper into Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam bestows deeper conviction in Srinam. So they go together. They reinforce or they support or they enhance in the benefits that each derives. And this is our last slide. There's Prabhupada offering obeisances before the deities at the Bhaktivedanta Manor in London. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Hari. The congregational chanting of whose name, holy names, destroys all sinful reactions, and the offering of obeisances unto whom relieves all material suffering. So there's the deity form, and then there's the name, and there's the scripture, and there's the devotees who are dedicating themselves to all of these, and the sacred places where the Lord performed his pastimes. So these five are most potent, and of those five, these two are especially important. The scripture. Prabhupada gave this nice explanation. Just like a train commonly proceeds on two tracks, so also spiritual life proceeds on two tracks. One track is a track that makes the heart pure, and the other track is that which gives direction to your activities. One without the other is incomplete. If one track of a train is missing, you're not going to go very far. If it's simply some activity that makes the heart cleansed, but not proper understanding of how to conduct your activities, it can become sentimentalism or fanaticism, unguided activities of someone. Or if there's simply an understanding of what to do, but the heart is not clear, not clean, then it's speculative knowledge that doesn't take you very far. So both have their place. They go very well together. And it's exactly what our founder Acharya did when he came to America. He gave, first of all, the prasadam and the holy name, and then gradually scriptural training and volumes, eventually volumes and volumes of literature for the benefit of humanity in large, whether they would chant or not. It's great literature to give guidance to a society that's misdirected. And then the chanting of the holy name. These two go well together. So that's our topic for this evening. Nice topic. Here's the opening slide again. Mutually supportive roles of Srinam and Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's see if there's some discussion. Yeah. Over there.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Would it be a benefit like people going to hospitals where people are dying and asking them to chant Hare Krishna?
There are devotees that do this regularly, but it's beneficial for everybody. Not just, that circumstances, it's beneficial, sure.
Even though they don't believe...
We heard it.
Yeah.
Exactly. What's stated in the Bhagavatam. It's spoken by the Vishnu Dutas to the Yamadutas. That type of chanting, even without faith, is beneficial. It's abhas. It's not Shuddha. It's abhas, but it's beneficial. It's very purifying. And when people are in that precarious condition, their hearts are more open to God or godliness. I mean, there are exceptions, but that's general.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yeah.
We hear Valmiki, when he wrote Ramayana, he got the realization, he was given a benediction by Brahma and
Yes.
he realized it and he wrote it. Srimad Bhagavatam is even more intricate with so many details. So Vyasadeva, we know, is the literary incarnation of the Lord. So did Vyasadeva also have some kind of realization based on which he wrote, or
yes.
he received the knowledge from?
Canto 1, Chapter 7, verses 5 through 7. Under the instruction of Narada, he did, and he got realization, and that's the basis and foundation of his writing of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. We have a hand up way in the back.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Can you please tell me the last slide that you showed, from where the sloka has taken?
Which one?
The last slide.
This one?
Yes, that one. Yeah. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's the one.
Nama Sankirtan Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam. I'd have to look it up. I don't know. It's the very last verse in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Thank you. You do. You chant it every day. Just ask him. He knows. Someone else.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Just out of curiosity, the Vaishnava apparat, can that block someone
Oh,
to
yeah, they
even
can
chant the
block.
Namabas?
Yeah, you
Even
can block
Namabas,
it. Yeah, you can. So watch out.
Oof. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Over here.
Maharaj, there's 2 online questions.
Okay.
They're both from Shraddha Prabhu.
That's Singapore, by the way. Go ahead.
Dear Guru Maharaj, may I kindly know, when one chants inattentively, how is the chanting differentiated if it is Abbas chanting or Nama Parad?
It's Abbas. So inattentively, but striving towards becoming attentive instead of inattentive is clearing, or Abbas. Supposing one is inattentive, period, and then it's offensive. But one can be attentive, striving to be attentive, but distracted. That's that hela, namabas. So that's the moving piece or factor is striving or not.
In your Harinama Chintamani classes, you mentioned that Shishupal's calling Krishna's names was considered both chanting in abhas as well as aparad. Because he was clearly vilifying Krishna, why is it not to be considered only Nam aparad? Please kindly correct my understanding.
I don't know if I said it's both. I'll take your word for it. I said it's both. In Madhurya Kandambini, which is a book, a nice book by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives some detail on this. As well, Jiva Goswami gives some detail on this in his Bhakti Sandarba, specifically Shishupal and the type of chanting of Krishna's name. First of all, Shishupal was a cousin. He was Krishna's relative. And he didn't understand Krishna as the personality of Godhead, but he knew that Krishna wasn't ordinary. And this is what these acharyas describe. So he was envious. He had dislike. He had even hatred. And according to, so Shrita, you can read Canto 7, Chapter 1, because the whole chapter is on the topic that you're asking this question of. But he hit the regard of Shishupal towards Krishna his mind was absorbed in dislike. And Narada Muni says, when one has fear or one has dislike, the mind is generally very concentrated. And so he was very concentrated. And also Kamsa was very concentrated. He was very afraid of Krishna. His mind was always with Krishna. So with his mind being always with Krishna and Shishupal's case, calling Krishna's name, he became purified. So now, it's not that he was trying to become purified any more than Ajamila was trying to become purified. Ajamila wasn't trying to become purified, but it was Abbas because he wasn't chanting with the explicit purpose of trying to become free from the actions of all the sins. He was chanting Narayan's name because he was calling his son, who was named Narayan. So, in the case of Shishupal's situation, he's calling Krishna's name in scorn or derision. And that's another one of the categories of Abbas, scorn or derision. Oh, Krishna. So it's Namabas. And, we just have to take it as that. Offenses, in the offenses are 10 in number, and it's one of those 10 offenses is not scorn and derision. His mind was fixed. Anyway, that's an explanation. Anything further? Are we done? We're done. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.